Hi everybody, it's Twisted Tuesday time. I'm going to update you on our very first case that we started doing the Twisted Tuesdays. This patient is about a 40-year-old female. Let me check. She's 45. So 45-year-old female, just super sick. I mean, list a symptom and she mostly has it. So when I was looking at her, she's a new patient. And the last time I reported on her, I was talking about how she's been seen by so many other different types of practitioners, and nobody's been able to lay the story straight for her. They keep running and doing these oddball tests that only add to the confusion of the case and doesn't add clarity to the case. So she spent over 2 years trying to figure out why she's feeling crappy. And the more she tried to find out what was going on, the more sick she got during the whole process. So she started out sick 2 years ago, and then over these last 2 years, she's been getting worse, even though she's been actively trying to get better and doing all the tests and all the procedures. She's just worse. Okay, so she spent a lot of money, and she spent a lot of time and stress and tears, and she's worse. Okay, so as her practitioner now, my job is to try to sew all of those loose threads together to form a picture. So with everything that she's brought in from the past, I went ahead and we started doing a few labs to try to get an idea of where she currently is. So one of the things that we do at the Wellness Way is we have special blood panels that we draw to extract very specific information, and especially in this case with this female, what we did is I ordered a female blood panel. Okay, now this panel right here, as you can see, has so many wonderful specific things that women need in their life, in their health. Okay, so we run the Wellness Way female panel, and in this panel, for only, what is it, $276 cash out the door. So you can order the blood work through me, or if you can get it cheaper through your other insurance or other docs, I welcome it. So I'll make a copy of this for you if you want to run a female panel and you want to see if it's cheaper to run it through your other docs or through your insurance. If you can beat $276, you're all for it. Okay, go for it. But here we get to see her lipids, her CRP, homocysteine, testosterone, DHEA, estradiol, estrone, vitamin D, estriol, hemoglobin A1C. Remember that in the first episode, I thought that she may have diabetes. And so it's wonderful that the female panel has all of those markers there. And we'll see what she scored on that. Then we got the pregnenolone, the progesterone, insulin, cortisol, CMP, which is complete metabolic panel, and then the CBC, which has all of our red blood cells and our white blood cells, which is super important, okay? And this whole panel has shined a lot of light onto this patient's case. So let's take a look at some of the information that we got from this panel. Okay, I marked out all of the patient's information so we can keep it secret. And what I did was, when I got this lab work done and got it back to me, I just wrote some notes, and so you guys can read along with me, kind of what these can indicate. And we're just trying to tie all these loose strings together. So the first thing that showed up was her white blood cells. So we have many white blood cells, but the one that's high in her case is called the basophil, okay? Basophil white blood cells can be increased or elevated if the person has inflammation, which this patient definitely does. Sinusitis, she may have an allergy or an infection in her sinuses, allergies, hemolytic anemia, which is the red blood cells are breaking down and she can't keep up. Hypothyroidism, and so we'll check her thyroid markers as well. Infections in her body, so that could be anywhere from the intestines to her muscle to her joints. There's infections that hide out in the body all over places, okay? And then the other one is leukemia. So with that in mind, we want to make sure that we start with the simpler things and not jump to big things like leukemia, even though we did check her white blood cells, so that's nice, and her lymphocytes. Taking a look again, her diabetes marker, glucose, was at a 77. So she is actually balancing her glucose levels quite well. So let's continue down. Then we hit this marker, which again is high. It's a 4.9 when the average is 3.2 to 4.8. So I'm lucky. Well, we're not lucky because we tested it, but it's so important that we saw this because albumin is only increased when a patient is dehydrated. Okay. So there's a saying, you know, if you hear horse hooves, you should expect a horse. Don't expect zebras. Hydration is super critical when it comes to people being healthy. There's no other thing that you can do to or to correct what dehydration causes in the body other than getting the patient hydrated. So I recommended with this patient that she starts drinking aloe juice, one for the inflammation, but two, it's just a wonderful way to hydrate. So could it be as simple as she's not eating and drinking enough? Absolutely. So let's check it out. The next marker that came up on the red marker as high was her AST levels, okay? AST, if it's elevated, that means there's damage going on actively in her cells. So her body is starting to self-destruct in a way, or a virus or a cancer or something like that is causing cell destruction. So if we fast for too long and we don't hydrate enough, yeah, that definitely could cause damage to our liver, our pancreas, our kidneys, and that could elevate the AST levels, okay? So again, just looking at all the multiple ways where we can tie this information together to get a better understanding of the patient. The next page, again, some more diabetes markers. So her hemoglobin A1C, this is a 3-month average of her sugar levels, was actually quite well. It's a 5.4, okay? So again, another X on that. Could it be diabetes? No, not really, okay? Then we get to insulin, okay? Insulin is a hormone that our body uses to push sugar from the blood into the tissue. With her insulin is actually super low, okay? Which means she hasn't been eating. She hasn't had a need for insulin in so long that her body really isn't producing it. So she's not eating. She doesn't have sugar in her blood. So her body's like, well, if you don't have sugar in your blood, I don't need to produce insulin. Okay? So we have dehydration and we have malnourishment starting to register on this blood work with this patient. Taking a look at her coronary risk, looking at her cholesterol, 228, I actually like to see that. That is a super reasonable response for a stress state that this patient currently is. Our body produces cholesterol in tandem with the inflammation and stress that we have in our body. So her body's trying to cool off all of that inflammation and irritation by producing cholesterol. So she definitely is responding in a positive way in this case. Taking a look at the LDLs, again, that's just part of the cholesterol marker. It's a little bit high, which is understandable for the crisis state that she's currently in. So I'm not worried about this. This is actually an appropriate response. Okay, so taking a look at CRP, which is a huge inflammation marker within the body, she's actually registering at a 0.3, okay, which is low. We want to keep it underneath 1, which is a super wonderful marker that indicates that the inflammation isn't so chronic and it's not, meaning the CRP will show us if there's inflammation in the body, and the stress, which won't show up as CRP, can actually cause all the other things. So her body's not creating a ton of inflammation. She's just responding to the stress and the strain that's being put on her body from not drinking and eating as much as she should. Okay, again, another inflammation marker, homocysteine, is within the normal range. Okay, so that's really positive to see these two markers in range like that. So we're not worried so much about heart attack and stroke necessarily. We got to go back to the basics, which is food and drink. So far in this case. Taking a look, last thing is vitamin D. Vitamin D is connected to everything in our body. It's connected to cholesterol, it's connected to our immune system, our overall wellness, everything, our bone health. Vitamin D is a huge factor, and she's low in that. Again, we can get a lot of good vitamin D from food sources, from supplements, even from going out in the sun. Our skin can produce vitamin D. But if you're sick and you can't get out of bed, you can't expose your skin to the sun. So I definitely need to start supplementing temporarily her vitamin D intake until she can be healthy enough to ingest it through her foods and be active enough to go outside and get exposed to the sun. So that will be something that I'll recommend as a supplement. Okay, but again, it's only temporary. So this gives us a lot of good clues on where to go next. Okay, so this doesn't solve the whole problem, but it is adding more puzzle pieces so that as we connect these pieces, we can produce a better picture. Okay, now, you know, TV makes medicine seem so linear. Medicine is, you know, you got a problem, the docs try to solve it for 45 minutes, and in the last 5 minutes, they answer the question. If you watch House, I love House, but man, that show was so darn predictable. Meaning, patient comes in with these crazy symptoms, and then they spend 99% of the episode trying different tests over and over, you know, do this, do this, do this, then this. I mean, 55 minutes worth of just testing, and then in the last 5 minutes of the show, they finally say, oh, it was this, okay? That's not necessarily true when it comes to real life, because real life will throw you a bunch of random curveballs. And why I bring that up is this same patient that we're talking about sent me some pictures today about a new development that's happening in her case, okay? So what is that new development, you may ask? Well, here's a picture, okay? So this patient is having severe painful rashes around her nose, mouth, and it's actually coming up into her eyes, okay? So not only are we trying to figure out 2 years worth of crazy tests and symptoms and blood markers and everything like that, but now she presents with this. So what do you guys think that is? Okay? This is really frustrating because it's unnecessary, but what this is it's an infection on her skin, and this is caused by masks. Wearing masks around your face creates a kind of a dirty underwear effect. Okay, we have to change our underwear every day, don't we? We should, okay, because it starts to stink and it starts to carry a bunch of bacteria and other toxic stuff that you don't want, right? And so a mask, if you wear the same mask all the time, or if you wear masks often, like what's being recommended right now, which is rubbish, okay, this is what happens. This is a 45-year-old female who's sick, and now because of the mask trapping all that bacteria and viruses against her skin in a moist environment, now she's harboring and she's growing this infection on her face. And it's not only for sick people. I actually got another picture of a young child who has the same thing. This is what happens when we wear masks, okay? This poor child, even though his immune system is probably rock solid, still cannot fight, the skin cannot fight the effects of the bacteria and the viruses festering on his nose when he goes to school, okay? So these are so frustrating to see how ignorance can create domino ripple effects in other areas of society, okay? So again, the mask issue is going to create a lot of issues such as these that we see, okay? We can't keep wearing these masks, okay? It's not worth it. Innocent people are being damaged and sickened because of our ignorance to the fact that this whole COVID thing is blown over. We don't need a mask at all. The CDC actually supports that on their website, but they're not news, they're not CNN, they're not Fox. So they're not going to make this huge 24-hour special about how the numbers are changing, unfortunately, but the information is there. So I would recommend to you guys to call your local hospitals, find out what's going on, go to the CDC website, look up the statistics, and listen to the professionals that are in charge of this area. So such as the face mask, there's so many professionals that know a lot about PPEs or protective gear that have warned us that this will happen if you wear masks for long times. You will create infections in your face and on your skin, and like we see here, we have 2 examples of that. Okay, so listen up, basically turn off the TV and start asking the professionals what the truth is, and we'll be way better off because of that. Okay, so CNN, Fox News, all these news agencies, all they want to do is create hype, and they just want to sell clicks. They're business folks. They're out to make money. I'm not out to make money. I'm here to share information and facts, okay? So I'm just a little guy just trying to create a ripple of my own, okay? So anyways, like I said, life's not perfect. Life is going to throw curveballs at us. Even if we have 1 trillion pounds on our shoulders, just based on the history of this patient, life will always throw rocks into our ponds and create more ripples. So I had to work with this patient this morning to explain to her exactly that this does not mean you're dying. This is just a side effect of an unnecessary mandate, which is the masks, okay? And I have these conversations way too often. I don't mind having them. I'm just frustrated that we're letting a few bad leaders in our society create this devastating ripple effects that affect people that are 45 all the way down to like 10-year-olds, okay? So again, welcome, and I appreciate you guys tuning in for these Twisted Tuesdays. I always try to keep it interesting, but sometimes health and sickness can be kind of scary, but I always try to keep an open and fun attitude when it comes to these things. So again, enjoy your family, enjoy your meal, and have a great night's sleep, because that's super big when it comes to the immune system and getting through the stresses of life. So have a great night's sleep. Good night.